Okay, kids, so now we've arrived at part 4 of the preterite, also known as the irregular preterites. And so far, we've covered 3 parts. The regular preterite, regular AR, ER, and IR verbs. We've also covered the car-gazar verbs, the verbs that end in car, gar, and zar. And we've covered the 5 irregular preterites, ir, ser, dar, ver, and haser. So now we've gone to the irregular preterite group, and this is a very unique group that works in a very unique way. One thing that's really important about the irregular preterites is that each verb in this category has got its own stem. So all the irregular preterites have got their own set of stems. They also have their own set of endings that don't have accent marks on them. So the nice thing about all of the irregular preterites is that there are no accent marks on any of them. When we work with the preterite, there are actually 3 different endings you need to know. There are endings for AR verbs, there are endings for ER verbs and IR verbs, and then there are endings for the irregular preterites. This set of endings goes for just the irregular preterites. And the endings are E in the O form, Iste in the to form, O in the LA usted form, Imos in the nosotros, Istes in the vosotros, and Hieron in the eos form. These are almost a hybrid between the AR and the ER endings. But again, this set of endings goes for just the irregular preterites. And there are no accent marks on any of these. Now, there's a song that we're going to be listening to in class that's going to help you memorize this a lot better. Here's a little preview. Irregular preterites have got their own set of stems and their own set of endings that don't have accent marks on them. Okay, so as we mentioned in the previous slide, the irregular preterites have their own set of stems. And these stems are going to be later added with the endings that we talked about before. There are 15 verbs that fall into this category, and they can really be divided into 2 different types of stems. We have U stems, the verbs that you see here on the left, and then we have the J stems, the verbs that you see here on the right. And there are 15 of them in total, 10 over here with the U stems and 5 with the J stems. Okay, so the U stems, we'll start with the verb andar, and the stem for the verb andar is anduv. Tener, tuv. Estar, estuve. Caber is my favorite verb. Coop, not cup, coop. Saber, soup. And haber, hub, H-U-B. We'll talk more about this verb here in class. Poder, the verb to be able to, is pud. Poner, to put or place, the stem is pus. And then querer, to want, quis. Finally, we come across venir, the verb to come, and the stem for venir is vin. Now, I know vin does not have a U in it, but it also doesn't have a J in it either, so we don't want venir to be left out, left alone, so we have to put them in some group. So venir is going to go here, all the way at the bottom of the U stems. If you notice, these verbs have been written strategically, only for memorization purposes. Anduv, tuv, and estuv seem to fit well together because they have the uv quality about them. Coop, soup, and hoop because of the up and the ub quality. Pud, pus, and keys, okay? And then vin. They just fit together nicely, and they're a little bit easier to memorize in this way. Now, jumping over to the J stems, we have the seed, to say or to tell, and its stem is dij. And when we actually conjugate these verbs, we're not going to pronounce that J because we don't do that in Spanish, but just for effect, to help us memorize them, I'm going to pronounce it here, so it's dij. Conducir is the verb to drive, as if you were conducting a car, and its stem is going to be conduge. We have traducir, the verb to translate, its stem, traduge. Producir, to produce, its stem is produge. And then traer, the verb to bring, is traj. If you're having a hard time with your J stems, just remember that these CIR verbs all have J's in their stems, and they bring traer, along with them. That they bring traer along with them. Okay, so now we're going to get to something very, very, very unique. And that is something called the Pac-Man rule. Now, before we get into why it's called the Pac-Man rule and the story behind it, we have to take a look at, well, how are we going to conjugate these verbs that we've been dealing with? Okay? It's really very simple. All you're going to be doing is you're going to be combining the stems with the endings. So if we took a verb like andar, for instance, and we wanted to do it in the yo form, I'm going to take my stem for andar, which is anduv, and I'm going to add my ending for irregular preterites in the yo form, which is an e. So that makes my verb form anduve. I walked. Okay, we'll do one more. If I wanted to do the seed, and I wanted it in the to form, I'm going to do my stem for the seed, which is dij. I'm going to add on the ending in the to form, which is iste, and I get my verb form dijiste. You said or you told. Now, this is going to bring us to something unique called the Pac-Man rule. So here's what happened. Right after Spanish was invented, there was an incident this one day. And as you can see from the drawing here, we have a bunch of hills. And on those hills, there is traveling a train. Now, the train, of course, is made up of many different cars or boxcars. And these two particular boxcars here, one said traj. The other one said hierron, just like this. So anyway, this one day this train is traveling along, chugga 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 choo choo, and it's chugging right along. But in the traj cart there was a passenger. And that passenger's name was Pac-Man. There he is. And Pac-Man, of course, is hungry. He is very hungry. Okay, he just wants to eat. And as the traj cart comes to the top of this hill and begins to head down the hill, the cart with traj on it collides with the cart that says hierron on it. Of course, Pac-Man's in the traj cart, and he's saying, hum, 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 hum. He's hungry. He wants to eat. And when the traj cart collides with the hierron cart, Pac-Man falls off right into the hierron cart. And when he does, Pac-Man, because he's so hungry, eats up the eye. He eats up the eye. So when the two carts finally come back together, they say trajeron, because Pac-Man, our friend Pac-Man, ate the eye. There he is. He's going to eat up that eye. So the rule, and this of course is a true story, so the rule is that with the J stems, and just the J stems, only those 5, traducir, producir, conducir, traer, and decir, just those 5, when you do the eos form only, just the eos form, eos, ellas, and ustedes, the ending is going to be just E-R-O-N and not I-E-R-O-N. So if I were to do, for instance, conducir, to drive, in the eos form of the preterite, I'm going to have conduge as my stem. My ending is going to be E-R-O-N. There's no I in there. If I were to do one of the U stems, however, that would be different. If I did a star, for instance, and I did that in the eos form, it would be a stuv, and I do have the I there. But with the J stems only, I don't have that I, because Pac-Man comes and he eats it up. Again, a true story. Okay, so why don't you take a minute and try to put some of the information that we've done here and put it together to try to conjugate these verbs appropriately. Again, all you have to do is to take the stem of the verb and then add on the appropriate ending. And there's going to be no accent marks on any of these. Vosotros, yo, none of them. So just take a minute, pause the video on your screen, and see if you can come up with these answers. Okay, so hopefully you've taken a minute to work on these, and now we're going to check our answers. So yo and poner, the stem for poner is pus. The ending in the yo form is e, and I get puse. Caber, the stem is coop. The ending in eos is hierron. It's not a J stem, so my I is going to stay in there. Cupieron. Traer. Stem is traj. The ending in the to form is iste. My new form, trajiste. Venir. The stem is vin. The ending in nosotros is imos. The verb, venimos. Querer. The stem is quis. The ending in vosotros is istes. My answer, quisistes. Saber. The stem is soup. The ending in ella is o. Supo. And lastly, producir. Usted. Stem is produge. Ending in usted is o. And I get produjo. And if you have any questions, I'll see you in class. Okay, kids?